We have Miami Dolphins Q&A coming up in just a second, but before we get into that portion of the show, we do have some Dolphins news to break down here. Tyreek Hill and the Dolphins have agreed to a massive contract restructure that makes Hill one of the most highest paid wide receivers in football. We know that Hill has been floating out the idea of wanting to be paid more money. It could have came in the form of a contract extension, but it just comes in a restructure, and there's no added money to the Tyreek Hill deal, but he did get a fully guaranteed contract that netted him $90 million over the next 3 seasons. 65 is guaranteed, which means the current Tyreek Hill contract is 4 years with $106.5 million guaranteed. It's the most ever for any wide receiver in the history of the NFL. So the best player in the NFL, voted on by the players. Side note, did you see that? He was voted number 1 in the NFL Top 100. That is by his peers, so congrats to Tyreek Hill. But he is paid like the best wide receiver in football, which he evidently could be, having back-to-back 1,700-yard seasons under the Miami Dolphins with Tua Tagovailoa. So now Tyreek Hill's been paid, Jalen Waddle's been paid, and Tyreek Hill has been paid as well this offseason, keeping that big trio in the Dolphins organization for years to come. That's awesome. I'm glad Hill got that worked out. I'm glad Chris Grier did that, and I'm glad there is really no more drama for the rest of camp. You don't really have to worry about any unhappy people for the rest of training camp like you see across the National Football League. One last piece of news as well. The Dolphins actually signed an offensive lineman. Sean Harlow is the name. They also waived an offensive lineman, Ireland Brown. They actually signed Ireland Brown like 3 weeks after the NFL draft on like a random move to fill the 90-man roster going into camp. Evidently, he was not able to showcase any reason to stick around, so they're going to take a flyer on Sean Harlow. One offensive lineman out, one offensive lineman in. Just a camp body, maybe see if you have anything. Not going to spend a full 8 minutes talking about Sean Harlow because it's probably insignificant in the grand scheme of things. But either way, before we get into the Dolphins Q&A, which talked Tua, talked Teron Armstead, and everything surrounding this Dolphins team moving forward through training camp, wanted to bring you guys that news. So enjoy the rest of the video, and I'll see you again with videos going on tomorrow. So go Fins. Another Miami Dolphins mailbag here. Training camp continues on, and you guys have questions surrounding the Miami Dolphins, and I'm here to answer it to the best of my ability. This is Dolphins Today by Chat Sports. I am Nic Rohloff. First question coming in from ZToxic2924. What's your record predictions for our division? I don't know if this is what you're asking, but I'm going to give it to you this way. I'm going to go through all 4 teams in the AFC East and give you my record prediction for them. We'll start with who I think is going to win the division. I've been very open about this. I think Miami, no homer, no bias, is going to end up winning the division. I just think they have the most talented roster from top to bottom. I think they have the best coach as well, with new head coach Jerod Mayo. Robert Saleh stinks. I think Sean McDermott's way overrated. And even though the Dolphins come up short, I think Mike McDaniel is the best coach. So I'm predicting the Dolphins to get off to a hot start with an easier schedule earlier on in the year to go 11-6, which I think is good enough to win the AFC East, because I think the Bills take a little bit of a step back, losing Jordan Poyer to Miami, losing Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis. They're front 4 getting a little bit older as well. I mean, their best wide receiver is Keon Coleman and Curtis Samuel. I think Josh Allen carries them enough to a solid record that gets them a wild card spot at 10-7. But I think the Bills finish second in the division at that record. I'll go New York 9-8. Think it's a good roster, but I'm a little skeptical of Aaron Rodgers because he's 2 years removed from playing good football. His last year in Green Bay wasn't that good, and he missed all of last season. So he's 2 years removed from good football. No, it's a good roster. I'm skeptical. I think they go 9-8. Like I said, I also think Salah is a bad coach. And then the Patriots, I think they're going to actually surprise people. I know a lot of people predict like 3-14, one of the worst teams in football, picking number 1 next year. I mean, they have a top 10 defense in all football. And if their offense is just not bottom 3 like it was last year, I think they win some games. So I predict 6-10 or 6-11 for New England, which is still good for last in the division by a wide margin. But that's how I like to see it. Dolphins 1-11-6, Bills at 10-7, Jets at 9-8, Patriots at 6-11, AFC East crown for the Miami Dolphins. Are you with me, though? Do you agree with that sentiment? Will the Dolphins win the AFC East, win the division, get a home playoff game? Type Y for yes or type N for no.
kind of works perfectly into our next question here from Batman822. Does Miami get a playoff win this year? I think they do. It'll be dependent on, obviously, matchups and health at the time. It's really hard to project that this far in advance. But if they do win the division like I think they will and go 11-6, 11-6 is probably good enough to get you the 3 seed. It'll be close. I mean, the AFC North is going to be a bloodbath. Like, I could see, 3 teams being 10-7 because of how good the Ravens, Bengals, Steelers, and Browns all are. The AFC West is going to go to Kansas City. I think they roll through that division, honestly. They're going to be the 1 seed again, probably be 13-4, or 12-5. The South, we'll see how Houston rebounds this year. Are they going to be able to stay top dogs? But if Miami wins the division at 11-6, I could see that being good enough for that 3 seed, which would then put them against the 6 seed, which might be an AFC North team. Might be your own division mate in the Buffalo Bills. But if you're hosting the team in Miami, and that's the important thing, is the playoff game Miami going to play, is it going to be in South Beach? If it is, that will give them a distinct advantage because you don't have to travel to the cold. Also, the cold weather team potentially has to go down south in the heat they're not used to. All things would benefit the Dolphins. I think they would win a playoff game if they host it. Question is, are they going to be able to win the division and host a playoff game? Our Swimmer 844, which defensive lineman outside of Zach Sieler, will lead the Dolphins in tackles? Which D lineman outside of Sieler will lead the Dolphins in sacks? Well, it's interesting the way you ask this, because you say defensive linemen. So are you including edge rushers? I wish I could ask you right now personally, because it would differentiate my answer. Because if I'm including edge rushers, I think a fully healthy Jalen Phillips is going to lead this team in sacks and tackles outside of Zach Sieler. But if we're not counting edges, so I guess I'll give you the best of both worlds here, I'll go Calais Campbell. And they signed him for a reason. He was very productive last year for the Falcons. Yes, he's 37 years old. Yes, he's been around the block for quite a while. But the former Miami Hurricane, returning back to the 305, getting to play alongside Zach Sieler, he had 40-plus tackles last year, 6.5 sacks. I don't know if he'll do that again, but if he gives you 5.5 sacks, gives you 40 tackles, that's probably going to lead this team on just pure defensive linemen outside of Zach Sieler. So to answer your question, I think it's Calais Campbell without a doubt. That 6'7", 300-pound man is going to be dominant in the middle of this Dolphins defense alongside Sieler. Not going to be as good as Christian Wilkins, but as good as a replacement as they could find as late as they did sign Calais Campbell in NFL free agency. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel because when we're watching this Dolphins team take down opponents on Sunday, we're going to be live breaking it all down. And our goal is to get to 58,000 subscribers. Wild number, but I think we can get there, about 800 away, before the first game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Help me out. Hit that sub button. You won't want to miss it because we have the best coverage around the Dolphins during the NFL season. Jada Fox, 1019, my buddy, coming in here with a question. How do you feel about our offense and defense this year after the Christian Wilkins departure? Well, we just mentioned about how Calais Campbell replaced Christian Wilkins on that interior defensive line. I think they obviously are going to feel the loss of Wilkins because of how dominant he is in the run-stopping department, but I do like Campbell's ability to fill in the gaps there. I think this defense is top 5, top 10 in the NFL. We've talked about it in depth. Good secondary if fully healthy. Good front 7 as well. Yeah, you lost Andrew Van Ginkel and Jerome Baker. You replace them with Jordan Brooks, and you replace them with Anthony Walker Jr. and a couple rookies on the edge, and Chop Robinson and Mo Kamara. I'm bullish on this team. I'm bullish on this defense. I think they'll be fine with the loss of Christian Wilkins. I like Anthony Weaver at DC much more than I like Vic Fangio as well. I think that's a key part that we don't talk about enough, that we actually have a good schematic guy and calling plays as well with Weaver. The offense, I feel very good about it. It was top 3 in the NFL last year. As long as they stay healthy again, the weapons are insane. Adding Odell Beckham Jr., that's an upgrade from wide receiver 3 last year. You get an upgraded tight end in Jonnu Smith. You get an upgraded running back room with Jalen Wright joining Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert. You still have Tua. If the offensive line is able to hold up, no, it's a big question with no right guard in certain and starting right guard. But if the offensive line can hold up, this offense is going to be as good or better than last year. Dolphins fan 298. Can Tua Tagovailoa win MVP in the 24-25 season? You know, I know a lot of people, specifically Dolphins fans, have different opinions on Tua. I actually think he can win MVP. I know, but let me lay out the situation for you. Dolphins win the division. They go 11-6. Hell, maybe even they go 12-5 and surprise me. Tua, who led the league in passing last year with 4,600 yards, does that again with 4,600 yards. But instead of throwing 29 touchdowns and 14 interceptions, that touchdown number gets bumped up to 35-36. Interceptions go down from 14 to 10. Well, now, whoa, we're talking about an AFC East winning team here that's 11-6, 12-5, and Tua's throwing for 4,500 yards, 36 touchdowns, and 10 INTs, and this team's competing for an AFC championship and a Super Bowl. Yeah, I could absolutely see Tua winning MVP. Is it a long shot? Absolutely. But there is a pathway, in my opinion, that Tua will be in that MVP conversation. And I don't know where he exactly is right now in the odds makers. I know you can bet now in South Florida a little bit. I'm telling you what, I'm cashing my tickets. I will be putting a wager on Tagovailoa to win MVP this year. Probably not going to go crazy, but I will have a ticket. Also have a ticket for the Dolphins to win the AFC East. I'm a betting man. I'm willing to put my money where my mouth is. But shout out your favorite Dolphin player. Maybe it is QB1. Maybe it is Tua. Maybe Dolphins fan who thinks Tua can win MVP this year wants to type Tua in the comments section. But maybe you at home want to talk about Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. Jalen Waddle is personally my favorite. I love the Waddle, man. Can't wait to do Waddles during Sundays this upcoming year. But let me know your favorite Dolphins player down in the comment section. McDaniel's Vapier with the final ask. Is Teron Armstead going to retire after this season? I actually think he is. Yeah, it's a good question. And I think the Dolphins believe that will be the case as well. There was rumors that Armstead, the longtime tackle in New Orleans, then of the Dolphins the past couple of years at left tackle, that he could have retired after last season going into this year. Evidently, he returns. I'm not sure if that's going to be a long-term thing. I think Armstead, and if the Dolphins go have a successful season where they win the AFC East, win a couple playoff games, I think Armstead could go out off this year, which is why the Dolphins drafted Patrick Paul in the second round of this past draft out of Houston. It was always viewed as a play for the future that wasn't going to impact the team this season, but Paul going to get reps under Austin Jackson as a swing tackle, under Teron Armstead, and then be the starting left tackle of the next 5-6 years if things go correctly and how Chris Grier sees them after Armstead retires. So yes, I actually do think Teron Armstead retires after the season, and then Patrick Paul is going to be your starting left tackle of the future. All right, make sure you follow us over on Instagram at Dolphins Today IG. If you didn't get your questions in today's mailbag, we asked this on our community page. Well, we've said when we get to 500 followers, we're going to do a IG mailbag. We're under 150 away, so go give us a follow for content in between each video we do here at Dolphins Today on YouTube. So if you want more Dolphins content, Dolphins Today IG is the best way to do it. So go follow us over there. And as always, folks, I'll see you tomorrow in another video. Go Fins.